In the Beginning by Dr. Walt Brown, page 255. Final thoughts of the Grand Canyon. Probably more geology has been exposed and studied in the Grand Canyon than in any other place on Earth. Therefore, the Grand Canyon is an excellent laboratory for testing the methods and explanations geologists have taught for the last century. What is the verdict? In words that few geologists would dispute, the Grand Canyon is a hazy mystery cloaked in intrigue and filled with enigmatic puzzles. Despite a century of concentrated effort by so many, their methods have produced recognized contradictions, and they have left much evidence completely unexplained. For example, item 118. Item 18, let's try that. Layering, limestone, why here? So why so recently? Marble Canyon, distant caverns, connections, perpendicular faults, arching, inner gorge, missing talus, Colorado Plateau, unusual erosion, Nankoweap Canyon, California's imperial sand dunes. These proposals do not address the obvious questions associated with the aspects of the Grand Canyon. What's wrong? As explained on page 209, evolutionary geology has been built upon two faulty assumptions: uniformitarianism and superposition. B. The global flood has been rejected out of hand as a possibility. C. Most geologists show little concern that they do not understand the forces, energy, and mechanisms that produced movements on and inside the Earth. Examples include continental drift, other plate movements, the production and release of magma, faulting, earthquakes, and the movements described in EndNote 22 on page 260. It should be no surprise that the unrivaled Grand Canyon and the water that was in those two huge high-elevation post-flood lakes are related to the most famous petrified forest and best-known mesa, butte, and spire region in the world, Monument Valley. Conversely, if mesas, buttes, and spires were formed over millions of years by meandering streams, the textbook explanation, then mesas, buttes, and spires should be more evenly distributed worldwide, not concentrated in this one basin on the Colorado Plateau. Tourists gaze at and geologists attempt to describe these magnificent, massive, and startling features, as well as the goosenecks, petrified forests, Slot Canyon, Zion and Bryce National Parks, other canyons in the regions, huge sand dunes, and hundreds of mounds and pits. How did they form? Also, archaeologists have wondered for a century why the people who lived in Nankoweap Basin suddenly left. Seldom understood are how all these features are related, the stupendous forces, energy, and mechanisms involved, and the event behind it all. Part 2 of this book describes that event. Historians of science have frequently noted that once scientists resolve a persistent enigma, seemingly unrelated mysteries are also resolved. Science then takes a giant step forward in what is called a paradigm shift. But the changed thinking doesn't happen overnight. It takes scientists and laymen, one, willing to re-examine old explanations in light of the new perspective and to follow the evidence where it leads, and two, ready to inform others of this new explanation and its supporting evidence, and three, able to withstand scorn and misrepresentation. Able to withstand scorn and misrepresentation from those whose income and prestige are tied to the old paradigm. The origin of the Grand Canyon is such an enigma, but it is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Part 2 of this book, beginning on page 119, describes 24 other interlocking pieces. Their snug fit gives credibility to the explanations for all pieces. Collectively, they provide a clear evidence of a global flood, Earth's defining geological event. the Grand Canyon right here. Kaibab limestone will be up here, and that goes all the way bump. Wow, so all this sediment was taken off. Vermilion cliffs, boom, white cliffs, pink cliffs, Cedar Valley, Cedar Breaks. Figure 150, geology and the Grand Staircase. The Grand Canyon region. The Grand Staircase is an immense sequence of sedimentary rock layers that stretch south for 100 miles from Bryce Canyon National Park through Zion National Park and into the Grand Canyon. In the 1870s, geologist Clarence Dutton first conceptualized this region as a huge stairway ascending out of the bottom of the Grand Canyon northward, with the cliff edge of each layer forming 5 giant steps. He colorfully named these Pink Cliffs, Gray Cliffs, White Cliffs, Vermilion Cliffs, and Chocolate Cliff. Above this drawing from 1945 by Peter J. Coney and Dick Beasley, revised, beautiful diagrams, the dramatic feature caused by the post-flood breach of Grand and Hopi Lakes. The cross-section represents elevation changes from the north end of Cedar City, Utah, to the south end of the Kaibab Plateau in Arizona. At right is a screenshot from Google Maps, shows the approximate orientation and length of the cross-section. Insert dream time. Okay. Grand Staircase from the Fever Overlook. Okay. Grand Canyon all the way up to Cedar. And that's what we see here. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. Kaibab Plateau. You decide. Throughout this chapter, you have seen two back it up. You decide. Throughout this chapter, you have seen two conflicting perspectives. The Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon after somehow penetrating the high Kaibab Plateau. Oops. Somehow penetrating the high Kaibab Plateau, shown by its green forests. Yeah. And two, Grand Lake and Hopi Lakes breached their boundaries, carved the Grand Canyon, and formed many surrounding terrain features, including the high, rapidly upwarped by the water balloon effect, Kaibab Plateau, subsurface water then spilled out of the suddenly elevated Kaibab Plateau down its steep slopes and eroded side canyons and valleys north of the river. As the Grand Canyon was cut deeper and deeper, subsurface water spilled down the slopes on the south side of the river, a secondary effect that explains why more of the canyon lies north of the river. Also remember that Grand Canyon extends 100 miles to the west of this picture. Wow. Which of the above two perspective fits the evidence? Could the Colorado River, which flows almost perpendicular to the side canyons and valleys, have carved them? Why are there no streams atop the Kaibab Plateau or the south rim that discharge into the vast side canyons? Why does most of the Grand Canyon lie on the north side of the rim? What initially cut the channel through the Kaibab Plateau that allowed the Colorado River to flow from the bottom right of this picture northwest 45 miles? Was it the Colorado River, or all the water spilling out of Grand and Hopi Lakes and the subsurface water draining out of the southwest side of the rapidly upwarped Kaibab Plateau? Is the Colorado River the cause or the consequence of the carving of the canyon, of the Grand Canyon? Coconino Sandstone. Figure 149. We are looking south at the Bright Angel Fault, shown by the dashed yellow line. Note the vertical offset of the two broken segments of the prominent, almost white, 400-foot Coconino Sandstone layer. Imagine the gigantic force that fractured and lifted many horizontal slabs of the thick rock along the dashed yellow line. The fracture extends some distance into the south rim of the Grand Canyon in front of the camera, and 60 miles to the north behind the camera. Now try to imagine a 300-mile-long train loaded with the weight of the 2,800 cubic miles of dirt eroded to form the Grand Canyon, plus enough water equal to the volume of 2 Lake Michigans and 1 Lake Huron to sweep that dirt 400 miles to the Gulf of California and then far into the Gulf. The train is traveling west along the path of the Colorado River flows today. The depressed ground below the heavy train springs back up when the train spills over the western edge of the Colorado Plateau that centuries earlier was lifted more than a mile. For every pound of dirt and water in the stupendous waterfall, an additional pound of upward force acted to shear the slab and produce the fault. That rebound and the vertical vibrations were greatest at the western edge of the plateau. So the horizontal slab fracture sheared along the dashed yellow line, and the west side of the fault was lifted 300 feet higher than the east side of the fault, allowing groundwater to spill out and erode much of the path that years later would become Bright Angel Trail down to the Colorado River. This dramatic fault and the break of the offset of the white Coconino sandstone layers are easily seen by looking across the canyon from the north rim. Yep, indeed. This is In the Beginning by Dr. Walt Brown, and it's available at creationsciencecenter.org or .com, one of the two.